The first mistake wasn't the kiss. It was believing I knew myself. One quiet night and one wrong song turned roommates into something electric. Now my heart won't shut up, my past won't let go, and Daniel keeps looking at me like I'm already brave enough to choose, this time. I told myself I liked Daniel because he was easy to live with. That was the safe explanation, the one I rehearsed whenever my eyes followed the sway of his laughter across our narrow kitchen. Roommates admire each other, I said. They share space, playlists, jokes, nothing dangerous. It was late September, when the weather started pretending it had secrets. The air got sharper, carrying the smell of rain and the promise of sweaters. Daniel switched our light bulbs to warmer tones and left a bowl of tangerines on the counter, like he was staging our lives. He had a way of noticing the little things. If I rubbed my shoulder after carrying groceries, he'd toss me the peppermint lotion his sister mailed him. If I burned toast, he'd scrape it clean, humming. He made domesticity feel like a skill, not a surrender. I was grateful. Gratitude is a polite word for hunger that doesn't know itself yet. I didn't then. I kept calling it comfort, kept calling it luck, kept calling it everything but what it was whenever Daniel returned from class, wind-ruffled and bright, and tossed his keys into the dish with a grin. On the night everything tilted, the apartment felt like a held breath. Rain stitched the windows. The city outside softened into echo and smudge. Daniel lit a candle that smelled like cedar and something sweeter, and put on a record he found at a thrift store with a cracked cover. "You're going to hate this," he said, and the needle dropped. A saxophone stumbled into a melancholy that turned my bones hollow. We sat at opposite ends of the couch, feet propped on the same battered ottoman, a blanket slipped between us like a line we could claim we respected. "I don't hate it," I told him, surprised to find it true. The music made the room feel older than us, like we were borrowing somebody else's evening. Daniel laughed low. He nudged the blanket toward me with his ankle. We were careful, the way people are before they aren't. I used to think carefulness was a virtue, but careful can be another kind of cowardly. My ex Mara used to accuse me of that, of hesitating until choices made themselves without me. She wanted declarations. I offered measured plans, compromises, tiny almosts. We ended with a quiet that pretended to be mercy. Daniel never asked for declarations. He asked what I was reading and actually listened. He asked if I liked my job at the campus bookstore, if I still painted sometimes, if I wanted the last tangerine. With him, I didn't feel cornered. I felt seen, and that scared me more. "Tell me something true," he said, somewhere in the middle of the record. Outside, thunder stitched itself to the rain. The candle made a small sun between us. I stared. At the ceiling like answers lived in the plaster. Daniel waited with the kind of patience that makes you brave. "Okay," I said. "Sometimes I think I could start over in a city where nobody knows me and become the version of myself I almost am. I'd be generous and decisive and unafraid. I'd write things and mean them. I wouldn't apologize for wanting more than the life I planned." Daniel tilted his head like he was listening for a key. "What would you want more of?" His voice barely lifted, but it tugged something in me anyway. The room fell quieter, as if the record remembered to breathe. I could feel the outline of my answer long before I dared it. "Contact," I said. The word startled us both. Like knowing someone and being known back. Not performing, not persuading. Just being held in the kind of attention that doesn't demand I be easy. I swallowed. "That sounds dramatic. Forget I said it." My laugh came out uneven. Daniel didn't let me run. "I won't forget," he said. He looked at me like he always does, careful, curious, kind. But there was something else there, something steady as tide. He slid his foot under the blanket until it touched mine. We both noticed, and neither of us pulled away. The record clicked into its last track, "I Am Not Brave." Or I wasn't, anyway. Even then, I felt a list of reasons assemble themselves like furniture. We were roommates, I was straight. This could complicate everything. The lease wasn't up until June. I nodded to each reason, sober as a judge, while the part of me that breathes leaned closer. Daniel said my name. Not Dustin like a summons, but Dustin like a secret. It felt like being chosen for something I hadn't auditioned for. He didn't move. He didn't assume. He gave me a square of time big enough to stand inside and make a choice. I stepped into it. When I kissed him, I meant to make it quick enough to take back. It wasn't quick. It wasn't anything I knew how to reverse. His mouth was warm, sure, but more than that, there was a steadiness in it, a permission, the kind of contact I'd named without knowing why. We parted a breath's length. His smile shook. Mine did too. The candle guttered and flared. The window flashed with lightning, bright enough to sketch our silhouettes on the far wall. For a suspended second, I saw us the way someone else might, two guys on a couch, deciding the weather inside them. Then my phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit my name in someone else's mouth. Mara. The world narrowed to that single syllable, to everything it carried. The old apartment, the carefulness, the plans, the versions of me that fit when I was smaller. I stared like it might explode. You can get it, Daniel said softly. Or not. He sat back a fraction, leaving space like a gift. The phone kept buzzing. So did my heart. I let it ring, listening to the rain decide, for once, what I couldn't name. We didn't plan the second kiss or the silence that followed. Rain stopped. Questions didn't. My phone kept secrets. Daniel kept distance, and I kept pretending names meant answers. If I was straight, why did my body memorize him? If I wasn't, why did fear sound like home? So loud. After the phone stopped buzzing, the apartment seemed to inhale again. The record whispered to a close, the needle clicking in its own small rhythm. Daniel's face held steady light, the kind that doesn't. Interrogate. My mouth still felt like I'd said something dangerous without saying anything at all. We can make tea, he offered, like the world had sensible steps. I exhaled a laugh that wasn't really a laugh. Tea feels like too much punctuation. Water, then. He stood with care as if the couch could bruise. I watched the way he moved through our kitchen, a choreography I knew by heart. The reach for the good glasses, the twist of the tap until it ran cold, the shoulder-length pause when he remembered the lemon slices he liked to float like suns. He didn't add them tonight. He carried me a glass and didn't sit too close, which somehow made me ache more. Are you okay? He asked, and I heard how he meant it. Not a test, an invitation. No, I swallowed. Also yes. Both can be true. He took a sip of his water and peered into it as if the answer might be on the surface tension. We don't have to solve anything right now. Solve. As if I was a puzzle with edge pieces waiting to be fitted. I wanted to be less solvable and more steady, but my insides felt like a snow globe someone had shaken too hard. I nodded, because nodding had always been one of my best skills. I'll sleep, I lied. He nodded back. Something like a secret, smile in the corner of his mouth like we were both in on the joke that sleep would be a generous fiction. Good night, Dustin. Night, I said. He turned off the candle with its little metal snuffer like a priest with a thurible. Dark, folded over the room. I listened to his footsteps down the hall, counted the beats between them, imagined each as a word he didn't say. I lay in bed and tried on sentences like clothes. I'm straight, except I'm not. None of them fit. The ceiling had nothing to offer. My phone lit twice with Mara's name, and then once with a text. You okay? I stared at it until the letters blurred, until the question unhooked from the past and hung there, a pure thing. Somewhere after midnight, the apartment settled into its old house creaks and confidences. I padded to the kitchen for water, the tile cool under my feet. Daniel was already there, sitting on the floor with his back against the cabinets, knees up, a blanket bundled around his shoulders like a lake someone forgot to fold. I almost turned around. He looked up before I could. No tea, he said gently. Still too much punctuation? I leaned beside him, shoulder to cabinet, and slid down until we were parallel, 2 lines that hadn't touched, and then, inexplicably, had. Our elbows didn't collide. It felt like a decision. When I sipped from the glass, the water tasted like cold answers. Do you regret it? I asked. The question came as a thief, not a scholar. Daniel didn't rush. He watched the refrigerator hum halfway, to sleep. No, he said finally. But if you do, I'll respect that. I don't know. The truth has a texture that makes you flinch even when you asked for it. I don't know what to call this. I don't know what to call me. Names are for plants and male, he said with a small, tired grin. You're allowed to be a tornado right now. I envied the ease with which he said that. What if it ruins our lease? The joke was a bruised peach. What if I break something I want to keep? He didn't look at me, and it was a kindness. Then we carry it carefully. Or we put it back together. Or we accept that some things, when broken, make space for better things. Like what? I whispered, as if we had neighbors on the other side of our walls listening for scandal. Like telling the truth, he said, and reached the length of his hand to where my wrist rested on my knee. His fingers didn't wrap around. They just waited, warm and patient, like the offer of a handshake in a sunrise. I let my wrist rest. The pulse there answered questions I couldn't. We sat like that until the refrigerator kicked back to life, a mundane engine reminding us that morning would come whether or not we were ready. He let go first, a mercy, and stood. Sleep, he said again, softer, knowing I would try and fail. We parted with a look that felt like a promise, not to rush, not to pretend. I dreamed in old furniture, my childhood bedroom, the posters, the baseball glove, the heat of summer, and the way my best friend's laughter stuck to my skin now and then in ways I brushed off because I had a plan. I woke to light and to the startling clarity that plans are great until they're not. Daniel already had a skillet going. He moved in a morning hush, not quite whistling. The kitchen smelled like toast and an orange split open. Hungry? He asked casual, as if we hadn't changed gravity. Always, I said, and meant it. He slid eggs onto a plate and pushed it across the counter to me. He wore an old t-shirt with a hole near the collar, and I wanted, absurdly, to put my finger through it and claim something. My phone buzzed again. A string from Mara. Can we talk? I have your hoodie. Also, we should talk. Are you ignoring me? No, I told the phone, out loud. I'm delaying. I typed. I'm okay. Busy today. Can we meet later this week? She read it and didn't reply. Guilt folded itself neatly and sat beside my plate like a napkin. Daniel didn't ask who it was, which made me blurt it anyway. Mara. He nodded, not like a threat, not like a competition. Do you want me to clear out when she comes by? The question landed somewhere between my ribs. No, I don't think I want to do this part alone. Okay, he said. It was his favorite word, one he used like a doorstop to keep rooms from slamming. Do you want distraction tonight? There's an open mic at Lark. I promised June I'd cheer her poem. I'll come. The answer surprised me. Maybe I needed to see the world bigger than our couch and my phone. Lark was all warm brick and mismatched chairs, a wall of succulents leaning in like an audience. The place hummed with that particular electricity of people willing to be vulnerable. Into a microphone, Daniel threaded through the crowd with ease, offering waves and hugs that felt like they had history. Watching him like this, chest open, eyes bright, I felt something unfurl and ask to stay. June read a poem that sounded like thunder in a library. I clapped until my palms stung. A guy with an undercut and an eyebrow ring asked Daniel about a zine. Someone with purple hair complimented his shirt. A woman in a denim jacket laughed too long at something he said and touched his forearm like an experiment. I wanted to be better than jealousy. I wasn't. You okay? Daniel said at my shoulder, as if I'd made a noise. "I'm crowded," I managed. The room's kindness pressed in until I couldn't locate my outline. "Fresh air?" He tipped his head toward the door. I followed without needing an argument to lose. Outside, the evening was damp with the memory of yesterday's storm. Streetlights cast the sidewalk in pockets of gold. We stood under the awning and watched a kid on a skateboard teach himself to fail less loudly. "I don't know how to hold this," I said. "Anything I name feels wrong or feels like I'm stealing something that belongs to people who were brave before me." Daniel leaned against the brick, hands in his pockets. "You don't have to pick a flag tonight. Or ever if you don't want to. I like you, Dustin." That's the only sentence I brought. "If this is curiosity for you, I can't be a mystery you solve and shelve. But if it's more, I can be patient while you figure out how to be honest without burning your life down." "I don't want you to wait for a ghost," I said. The skateboard wheels clicked over a crack. "I want—" The word stuck. Want. Dangerous cousin of need. "I want to not be afraid of wanting you." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since the couch. "Then start small. Want something and let me see you want it." I reached for his hand. It shook. He let me take it anyway. Our fingers learned a new shape. The world didn't explode. It just grew a little around us, like a shirt you thought was too tight and then wasn't. We stood like that until the skateboard kid nailed a trick and whooped into the evening. Daniel squeezed once, a quiet celebration for someone else's win. Inside, someone recited a line about a pocket full of sunsets. We went back in long enough to clap for the last poet and to tell June she was the kind of brave that made rooms softer. On the walk home, the city seemed to remember us. The street where the curry place always smells like cumin. The corner where the bus sighs on its haunches. The elevator in our building that sticks at the 5th floor and then remembers its job with a groan. We leaned into the metal wall with our hands still finding excuses to touch. Some elevator gods have a sense of humor. Ours shuddered and halted between floors for a heartbeat before lurching back to life. Daniel laughed, the sound spiraling through me like hope. Back in the apartment, the layout remained faithful. Couch, lamp, bowls, the ghost of last night sharp as weather. I went to my room to change into a softer t-shirt and came out to find Daniel picking at a guitar I rarely heard him play, fingers idling over a melody I didn't recognize. I watched his profile and thought, I can learn this. My phone chimed, a voicemail from a number my stomach knew. I didn't press play. Instead, a new text arrived. Outside your place. Can I come up? I stared at the words until they arranged themselves into Mara at our door, my past in a hoodie, with my name on it. A knock sounded, polite as a question. Daniel looked up, his hands going still on the strings. The knock came again, softer, as if mercy has a volume setting. Do you want me to... he began. I stood, heart thudding against the future. The room tilted the way it had when the record started, a slide into a song I didn't know all the words to. Behind the door waited a version of me I'd been so good at playing. In the room, a version of me I didn't know yet. Hand warm. Possible. The third knock landed like a drum beat. I took a breath that could have been a yes to either, life, and reached for the handle. 3 knocks, 2 lives, 1 mouthful of truth. Daniel's guitar still trembling in the air, Mara's hoodie ghosting the peephole, my pulse counting backward from brave. I used to label choices. Tonight they name me. Open meant honesty, closed meant hunger. I turned the handle and met my past, properly. Mara stood there in my old college hoodie and rain-damp hair, smelling like laundry and the wet concrete of a night deciding not to storm. The hallway's flickering light gave her a halo, which felt unfair to both of us. She held up a paper bag like a peace offering. I brought the rest of your books, she said, then glanced past my shoulder into our apartment, where Daniel sat with the guitar in his lap, fingers paused over the strings. His face was open in that way of his, neither apologizing nor insisting. I realized how much I'd changed just by noticing that. Come in, I said, stepping back. The word felt like a hinge. She took 2 steps inside and stopped on the threshold of our living room, as if the rug were a border. The cedar candle on the shelf, unlit, made the room smell faintly like woods I hadn't yet earned. A tangerine sat alone in the bowl, glowing like a small idea. "Hey, Daniel," she managed, polite with a question inside. "Hey, Mara." He stood, set the guitar quietly in its stand, and gave us both a little nod. "I'll be in my room. Holler if you need water or, I don't know, a witness." He smiled at me then, and something unspooled behind my ribs. He disappeared down the hall, the door not quite closing. Silence arranged itself and waited to see if we'd decorate it. I took the bag and set it on the table. A paperback slid out, a collection of essays I'd kept promising to read after. All this settled, though I had never named what this meant. "Thanks," I said. She nodded, tucked her hair behind her ear, looked anywhere but my face. "I texted," she said finally, not accusing, not accusing. "I saw." I let a beat pass. "I wanted to answer when I could be honest." She snorted softly, not unkind. "New hobby?" "Trying it on," I said, and watched her flinch. At my attempt at humor, not because it was cruel, but because it was new. I inhaled, tasted citrus, resolve. Last night I kissed Daniel. There it was, laid like a plate between us. Her eyes flicked shut and open, the way you blink when a room changes brightness too quickly. "Okay," she said. Then again to herself, "Okay." She sat on the edge of the couch like it might buck her. "Are you—" She frowned at the air, searching for a word she didn't own. "Was I wrong about you?" "You weren't wrong about me," I said, surprised at how quickly the answer arrived. "You knew what I was good at avoiding. You wanted a certainty I didn't know how to give. I still don't, I let the truth gather. I want him. I don't know what to call everything else yet." Mara stared at the tangerine like it might peel itself and offer a prophecy. "When we were together," she said, voice steady, "I would watch you curating your life like a museum display. Good lighting, careful captions, nothing messy on the floor. I kept waiting for the after-hours version." She looked up. "I didn't want to break the glass to get to you." "I didn't want to see what might spill out," I admitted. "I thought control was love's adult sibling." And now? There was no anger in her tone, just the kind of curiosity that used to make me defensive and now felt like a gift. "Now I think love is what happens when you finally admit you don't control anything worth having," I said. The sentence felt like it had been waiting behind my teeth for years. "And I think I'm not straight the way I thought I was. I don't have a better sentence yet." She exhaled. "I'm not your confessor, Dustin." Then, softer. "But I did love you. I still have a place that is shaped like you. It will take time to become general space again." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it twice. For the ways I'd half lived with her, and for the hurt of a door whose frame we both clung to for too long. "Don't be sorry for not being a statue." She swallowed. "Be sorry if you repeat yourself." The room settled into a gentler kind of quiet. From down the hall, a single guitar string thrummed as if a hand had grazed it in passing. "Are you angry?" I asked, though I knew it was a privilege to expect her to soothe me. She considered. "I'm relieved," she said, surprising us both. Not at the specifics of it, because yes, that stings, but at the fact that something made you name a want without a spreadsheet. I was starting to think I'd made you up. "I keep thinking about that night I told you I wanted a city where no one knew me," I said. I kept imagining a different Dustin, braver. But maybe it was just this Dustin here now with the same people and a little less fear. "You don't have to leave to arrive," she said. Unfortunately. There was the edge of our old. Jokes, almost kinder now. She stood, smoothed the hoodie like it belonged to us both, then peeled it off and set it on the back of the chair. Underneath, she wore a soft gray sweater I'd have stolen if stealing made sense anymore. "I came to return things and ask if there was anything we left unsaid. Now there isn't." "I didn't cheat," I said, sudden and small. I know you know, but I need to say it out loud. I know, she said. We were over in all the ways that matter except the one where you change your Facebook status. She rolled her eyes at herself. You can, by the way. I laughed. It startled us into real ease just for a heartbeat. At the door, she paused. Are you safe? Not just with him? In the world? The question had weight. I think so, I said. I'm going to be loud and quiet on purpose until I understand where I need to be which. I have people. I gestured in the direction of the half-closed door. And I'm learning how to be one too. She nodded. Be patient with yourself, but not so patient the moment ends. And tell Daniel. She hesitated. Tell him to take care of you, or I'll come back and glare at him with the intensity of 1,000 dying stars. I smiled. He responds well to stellar phenomena. I bet he does, she said, a grin ghosting her mouth. She reached up like she might ruffle my hair, and then didn't. We were old enough now to let some gestures remain idea. Goodbye, Dustin. Bye, Mara. The word didn't shatter, it didn't echo. It placed itself where it belonged. I watched her disappear down the hall until she turned the corner, until the building swallowed the sound of her boots. The quiet that followed was generous. I stood there and felt the shape of my life around me, the way you feel a jacket's weight before you commit to wearing it out the door. Daniel's door was still ajar. I knocked once on the frame. Hey, he said, looking up from where he sat on the floor, back against the bed, the guitar across his knees. His eyes searched mine without greed. You okay? I think so. My voice held. She gave me back my hoodie and my alibi. I exhaled. I told her. He nodded, as if we had expected no less from me. How did honesty fit? Like, a shirt I thought would be tight, I said, and we both smiled at the echo. He set the guitar aside and held out his hand. I went to him, sat, let my shoulder find the stretch of his. The room smelled like pine soap and the ghost of cedar. On his nightstand, a jar of peppermint lotion caught the light. A joke and a promise. I don't want to treat you like a mystery, I said into the space between us. I want to treat you like a person I choose. His inhale stuttered at the end. I choose you back, he said simply. We can take it slow. And when slow feels like hiding, we can take it brave. Brave, I repeated, as if learning the word's shape with my mouth. I want to tell June. I want to tell myself again tomorrow. I want to hold your hand outside because mine stops shaking when yours is around it. I want to learn how you like your eggs when we're late. I want your terrible thrift store records. He laughed then, a real, delighted thing. They're an acquired taste. I acquired you, I said. The rest can follow. We stood and drifted to the living room as if buoyed, as if gravity had renegotiated terms. He lit the cedar candle. He didn't put on the saxophone record, Mercy Comes in playlists, just let the soft hum of the city and the candle's tiny crackles score us. I reached and tugged at the frayed hole in his t-shirt collar with my fingertip. He tilted forward and kissed me. It wasn't tentative anymore. It was careful the way you are with something alive, not fragile. The kiss landed and opened. Heat and steadiness, yes, but also recognition. The sense that my body had been waiting at a bus stop and the right bus had finally arrived. We stopped to breathe, foreheads touching. Tea? He murmured. Tea, I said. I think I can handle some punctuation. We made it together, clinking mugs like a vow that didn't need witnesses. I peeled the last tangerine and divided the segments, pressing half into his palm. Juice stickied our fingers. He licked mine clean, and we both laughed at the way delight, when invited, multiplies. On the couch, we didn't keep distance. He tucked his feet under my thigh. I nestled my hand in the dip below his knee. We didn't talk about leases or futures, or what anyone would call us. We made a list by not making a list. Hold hands where the light can find us. Tell the truth when it's small so we're strong enough for the big. Do the dishes before resentment forms, and if it does, call it by its name and walk it around the block. At some point, I realized I was breathing in a way that felt like I'd been practicing for this my whole life without knowing it. The candle ate itself down. Daniel's head fell onto my shoulder, heavy and right. My phone lay face down on the table, quiet as a closed chapter. "Hey," I whispered into his hair. "Thank you for waiting until I chose." "Thank you for choosing," he murmured back. The rain had long since coiled itself back into the sky. The city, generous, gave us a night that felt like a beginning without a parade. I rested there with Daniel, my roommate, my something more, my right now and maybe later, and decided to trust the present tense. Names could come later, or not. The weather inside me finally matched the forecast I wanted to live by. I used to think the first mistake was the kiss. Now I knew the first courage was to stay, and I did.